Whites passing for blacks has been the subject of serious films in the past, this time with Soul Man. It's played mostly for laughs. Soul Man is a cute enough idea for a comedy. C. Thomas Howell plays a kid who has the grades to get into Harvard Law School, but he needs a scholarship, and he finds one that he can win. The only problem, he's not black, and that's the requirement of the scholarship. So taking some pills to change his color, he goes to Boston, where actually I think he looks more suntan than black, see if you agree. And at Harvard, he becomes a victim of stereotyping when playing basketball.
Names? Mark Watson.
Okie dokie, why don't we just take Mark on our team and you can have,
Gordon Bloomfield.
No, why don't you guys take Gordon and we'll take Marcus.
Oh, well, you know, look, I wrote it down this way, and I know the way you hate a messy team list, so...
Come on, Ernie, you guys got Leon, you get Marcus.
That's Mark.
When he can't complete a paper on time because he was jailed by a white cop on a trumped-up charge, he looks for sympathy from his black professor, played by James Earl Jones.
Look, Professor, with all due respect, sir, I just spent 18 hours in a jail cell on no formal charges, getting pulverized by drunken bigots. And you expect me to come down here?
I said there would be no excuses for late work, and I meant no excuses. A judge and jury won't give a damn if you've had a bad day before a trial.
I would think you could understand.
You'll get no special treatment from me, Mr. Watson. Do you hear me?
That's a good speech. The movie could use a little more of that tension, actually a lot more of that tension, and more of its good love story between Howell and Rae Dawn Chong we saw at the beginning of the show. She's another law student who is a little sour on love. Her performance and that of James Earl Jones are the best part of Soul Man, and they're the serious parts of the film. What doesn't work as well, and this is surprising, is the comedy, save for a couple of big laughs. I guess the movie set at Harvard should have people that are as bright as anyone that we meet in the movies. Instead, the level of comedy in this film, indeed the general level of conversation, in the comedy sequences at least, is no different than any high school teenage picture. In some, we have bright actors working in a not very bright script.
Gee, you know, during the first hour of this movie, I was really wishing it on. I was so interested in the premise that I wanted it to be a good movie.
Yes.
I thought they could go somewhere with this. And then in the last hour, I totally gave up, because if they're not going to try, then why should I try? For example, all of that business about the sex-mad white girl who's hidden in the bedroom while Rae Dawn Chong is in the living room and the parents are in the kitchen, and he's running around like Groucho Marx in room service. Why do we need really dumb jokes like that when, in fact, what we want is for these people to really confront the reality? And the love affair, you mentioned that. I thought that was cute. She's good, James Earl Jones is good, but where was the physical aspect of it? They didn't really have the physical chemistry. They were talking about the concept of being in love.
Well, because it's a little dangerous and probably isn't commercial and is challenging. There's a very challenging line at the end of the film talking about interracial love. And if the film had pursued that, it could be quite a provocative film. Instead, it just has it as a verbal line, nothing else.
You put your finger right on one real glaring omission in the film, and that is Rae Dawn Chong never has a scene where she really talks with this guy about the fact that he was pretending to be black. They never really talk about that. It's done off camera. Our next movie is named Half Moon Street, and it tells the intriguing story of an American woman in London, a woman who is both an intellectual and a high-class hooker. The woman is played by Sigourney Weaver in a role that comes right after her big success in Aliens, and it shows once again how many different kinds of roles that Weaver really can handle very well. She's a researcher in a foreign policy institute, but it doesn't pay her enough to live on, so she signs up with an escort agency. She becomes a prostitute, and one of her first clients is a member of the British House of Lords, played by Michael Caine.
Hi, I'm Lawrence Fuller.
An American, how exotic. I'm Sam Weller. Nice to meet you. Give me your things.
Sam Weller, huh? Dickens, isn't it?
Yes.
The Pickwick Papers? What made you pick a Cockney character as a pseudonym, Lord Bulbeck?
You know my real name?
I see you on the box, actually.
You seem to know a lot about me.
Their first encounter is purely sexual, but then they discover they like each other, and a quiet little romance begins to blossom.
Why does somebody like you go to the Jasmine Agency?
We men are stuck with the courtship ritual, and I just don't have the time for it. I was going to ask you the same question.
I need the money. And I happen to like uncomplicated sex.
A lot of women need the money, but
A lot of women like uncomplicated sex.
You know, Gene, looking at that clip again, I was reminded year after year after year in every kind of movie that he makes, Michael Caine never gives a bad performance. He is just one of the most professional and dependable of movie actors.
I hope he gets an Oscar nomination for Hannah and Her Sisters, which was long ago in this year, but that was a superb performance,
Yeah,
too.
look at that one. 2 pictures in the same year, and he made a couple more, too. It looks in that scene as if their relationship is going to grow into a cozy domestic partnership involving food, sex, and politics. But it turns out that Sigourney Weaver doesn't know the whole story about the escort agency that she works for and why they paired her up with this member of the House of Lords. Half Moon Street develops into a complicated story of spies and espionage and foreign intrigue, and before it's over, both of those lovers are going to be pawns of Middle Eastern terrorists. The movie's based on the novel by Paul Theroux, who was basically more interested in his book in the psychology of a woman who was attracted both to politics and to prostitution. And although this is a good movie, I think it gets sidetracked too much into the thriller stuff and doesn't have enough of her character. But the performances are great, and I think it's a real interesting movie for that reason.
That's my review, too. And I'm giving it a pass because I think it has 2 terrific performances and 2 terrific characters, and then it does put them in sort of a ridiculous situation. I don't care about terrorists, at least played at this level, because it's almost played at a comical level in the beginning of the film, and I never really buy them as serious, dangerous, threatening terrorists. And so what I ended up doing was just watching 2 good professionals, great professionals, work at their craft.
The problem with the whole last scene, or the whole climax of Half Moon Street, is this is kind of a sophisticated version of what we've talked about so often on this program, which is they give you great characters for an hour and 45 minutes, then they end it with a chase, and who wins the chase is the victor. It's not exactly a chase at the end of this, but it's a showdown. It's not true to the novel. It's a phony climax with lots of action and police and shooting and so forth, and who needs that when these people themselves are so interesting?
And the other film that avoided that is very similar to it this year, of course, is Mona Lisa, which has some of the same kind of human contact and deception going on and doesn't resolve itself into a ridiculous little thriller at the end.
Be a great double feature, though, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Again, though, I mean, because I guess we're both recommending the film, 2 very good performances. Our next film is called From Beyond, and it caught me by surprise because I'm the guy who was bored silly by the monsters in Aliens. But I laughed and sort of marveled at the creatures in From Beyond, which probably cost about 1/10 as much to make. The story is that old reliable, a mad doctor who wants to push the boundaries of knowledge. In this case, discover a telepathic 6th sense. To do it, he develops a machine that works on the pineal gland. His experiment allows you to see normally invisible objects, as well as experience all manner of sensual pleasure. But naturally, as his young assistant finds out, the doctor's machine is too powerful. Aren't they always?
Turn it off. Edward, shut it off. Never. Can't you feel it? Movement in the mind. The mind. It's out of control. You've got to turn it off. No. No, I want to see more. More than any man has ever seen. Edward, it's running itself!
Later, another scientist, a pretty young woman, also becomes interested in the mad doctor's machine, and against the assistant's best advice, she rushes to plug it in again.
Do you realize now what I was creating? The key to a new realm of sensation. Edward, my God, what have you become?
Ah, yes, the price you have to pay for knowledge. From Beyond has a lot of what many people might find to be gross scenes in it. I find them to be sort of gross, too. I mean, sucking out of eyeballs, again, being swallowed by monsters, and then wiggly little worms, those are the enlarged pineal glands, popping through people's skulls. I like the way they just sort of float around like that. And some unnecessary kinky sex. And yet I found the movie to be...
What can be unnecessary about kinky sex in a movie that you've already described with slimy monsters eating people and little worms sticking out of your...
it's just taking it into a new territory.
Oh, we don't want it to go too far, right?
Not too far.
Okay.
Not too far. Actually, this movie is great fun. You can already tell he's laughing at it. I found the movie to be so cleanly told by director Stuart Gordon and so forcefully acted in that last scene by Barbara Crampton and Jeffrey Combs, as well as also earlier Ted Sorrell as Dr. Pretorius, the guy who wants to know more than any man in the world, that I enjoyed this little horror film more than Aliens. It didn't gross me out. It didn't bore me. It tickled me. I think this is a really good little picture.
Well, it has some qualities to it. I like Stuart Gordon's last movie, The Reanimator, a lot better than this one, and I'm not giving this one a thumbs up, although it's marginal. And it does, you're right, have a lot of humor in it and a lot of spirit and some really gory monsters.
So what's bad?
What's bad? It didn't have the insane tension of The Reanimator, which led you from beginning to end with that kind of obsession that this movie doesn't have, and you're right, it digresses. The scene where she puts on the leather, for example.
Exactly.
Now, why is that scene in there? I'll tell you why, because Stuart Gordon probably said, when was the last time you saw a woman dressed in leather who was swallowed by a slime worm from outer space?
Okay.
Not often, so that's probably why, but I think it's a close call. It's certainly not better than Aliens.
And that, I think Aliens just was unrelenting. I think this film has a sense of humor about itself that is great fun, and I think it is forcefully told.
Okay.
Because I sat there and I didn't find too many scenes, except with that one scene which you now agree with is unnecessary, kinky sex, because that one scene was the only glitch in the whole film. And when a movie can drive me straight through like that, even if it's about silly subjects like those slimy creatures, I like it.
I will go this far with you. I will suggest that Stuart Gordon has a future as a really good director in this genre. Maybe he can make other kinds of pictures too. We don't know yet. And that this picture shows a lot of promise, not as good as this first one. Is that doesn't make you happy? Okay. What can be unnecessary about kinky sex in a movie that you've already described with slimy monsters eating people and little worms sticking out of your...
It's just taking it into a new
territory. Oh, we don't want it to go too far,
Well,
right?
Not too far.
Okay.
Not too far.